All right, so did you look up this Combat of the 30 thing?
Yeah, I did, and I'm intrigued by it, and I'm also embarrassed because I didn't even know that was a thing, and this is kind of my wheelhouse.
Do I get points for an engineer bringing history information to the historian?
Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Yes, fine, have your points. But they're like Reddit points. They don't count.
They don't count. So here's the thought here. I wanted to talk to you about, I guess the overarching topic would be rules of war. But this thing called the Combat of the 30 is the height, in my opinion, of the rules of war being applied. And the height of chivalry and all that kind of thing. And I don't really understand the context in which this activity took place. So how should we do this? Do you want to explain what happened, or should we just kind of go back and forth?
Oh, like how we got to this place where this battle occurred?
Yeah, so can I briefly explain in a very short, condensed way what it is we're talking about, and then you tell me how we got to this point?
That I can do. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so there's this thing that happened called the Combat of the 30. And as I understand it, there's the French and the British, and they're going against each other like crazy. And maybe it's not the French proper and the British proper, but it's like French-sounding dudes and British-sounding dudes.
English at the time, but yeah.
English? Okay, forgive me. So in 1351, there was this meeting, and it was on March 26, 1351. And basically, these guys got together, and they're like, look, we don't like each other, and we've been warring for quite a while now. What if we just chill and we pick our 30 best dudes on both sides, and we just have like a mini war, and we pretend that this mini war, whatever comes from this mini war, is equivalent to what would have happened at the big war, and then let's just decide to act as if that's what happened. And that way we don't deplete our nations or our societies of personnel and resources and, emotional trauma. Let's just have this mini war. You pick 30 folks, we'll pick 30 folks, and we'll meet in a field, we'll pick the place, we'll come up with all these rules, and we'll fight to the death. And whoever wins that, we'll say, is the winner of the war. And they actually did it. That's the crazy part. They did it. There's a lot of times where I've thought things like, well, why are we having huge nations go kill each other? Why don't we just get like the presidents or the leaders of the nations to arm wrestle or, something? It's kind of a childish thought, right? And I think the reason we can't do that is because, people are wicked and we're always going to cheat when it comes to things like war. So the idea of having rules of war is just crazy to me because the other side's not going to hold up at their end of the bargain. So my question here is, how did we get to this place in history, the 26th of March, 1351? How did we get to this moment? What is the context of this situation? Who are the players, and why are they angry at each other?
Okay, I put most of my time into trying to figure out what on earth was going on with this Combat of the 30 thing, but I feel like I can give you at least a pretty good answer. I'm going to ask for forgiveness in advance if some of my details are wrong. Fair enough?
Yeah, so to be clear, we're not claiming to be experts on this topic. We're just two dudes talking.
One of the really pivotal moments in the Middle Ages happens in 1066 AD. Does that year stand out to you? Have you heard about this?
I've heard the year. I don't know why.
Maybe it's just because it's a number that comes up from time to time. That is the year that William, Duke of Normandy, invaded England successfully.
So he basically got on boats and went across the English Channel and started whooping up on people.
Yes, this is the conquest that changed everything. So I know you're into Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones is kind of like a reverse of all of history in Western Europe. And so the moment of the conquest in Game of Thrones is kind of like the moment of the conquest in 1066 AD. If you think about it, that's the last time that island has been successfully invaded.
I'm trying to think.
Just let that sink in.
I mean, the Germans did a pretty dang good job with the Luftwaffe.
Didn't invade. They weren't ready to put people on boats and land them.
Okay.
It's really hard to do that kind of a marine invasion,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really hard for the Allies going the other direction to do that invasion, right?
Yeah, it was.
So whatever the case, William is still styled as the Duke of Normandy, who has allegiance sworn to the French king. Does that make sense?
I'm going to ask a really dumb question.
You're good?
What is a duke?
In most of the hierarchies, the pyramid schemes that we would call feudalism, a duke would be the highest ranking noble below a king.
Okay.
So you understand what I'm talking about when I say feudalism, right?
No. I mean, I'm supposed to, but I don't.
No, you're supposed to understand laminar flow and Reynolds numbers. This is different.
Help me.
So the political social hierarchy of the Middle Ages, not just in the West, by the way, this also evolved in Japan and other places, is called feudalism. Not like feutilism, but F-E-U like feudalism. The way this works is it's a pyramid scheme. People swear loyalty to the people above them who swear loyalty to the people above them. And then eventually what you get is everyone being funneled down into de facto loyalty being sworn to one head of state. It's like the Skittles game. This is whoever was positioned the right way with the right resources to ultimately be able to demand everyone's loyalty. A feudal oath would usually involve a promise to provide the resources from land and men to go and fight during campaign season if called upon. So like once again in Game of Thrones, when they're like, call your bannermen, this would be a feudal relationship between a lord and an underling. The relationship the other way, going down, is that the lords above those who swore loyalty to them would provide justice and defense. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's like it's the smallest government packet in any given land. So it would be equivalent to like a city council kind of thing, only, you'll pay us taxes and we'll make you roads kind of thing.
Yeah.
Only back in the old days, and we need your crops, and we'll give you our sword in time of need.
Yeah, exactly like that. Except a duke was, frankly, pretty significant, and in another context might have just been considered a king of a smaller kingdom. And in fact, a lot of duchies, a lot of places where dukes served were kingdoms before being absorbed into a larger kingdom at some point in history.
Okay. Got it.
So William, Duke of Normandy, would be the highest ranking kind of lord under the King of France in the mid-11th century. And he goes and just takes it upon himself to see if he can conquer England real quick, which is super fun. So it's a big important battle, the Battle of Hastings. There are two different heralds involved that are English and Scandinavian, sort of.
Heralds, what do you mean?
They're two different guys whose names happen to be Harold. It makes it confusing. So it's not a title. Their name's just Harold, dude.
Okay, got it. So these aren't people like going around saying, hear ye, hear ye.
No, that's different. They're literally just dudes named Harold.
Okay, got it.
And so I've talked with you before about, I think it's called the Battle of Stamford Bridge, where that Viking berserker held off like a gazillion people. That is all a part of this campaign. The way it works out is William, Duke of Normandy, wins. Ultimately, he gathers all of these lords from around his newly conquered island and makes them meet him, I think at Salisbury Hill, Salisbury Cathedral, something like that. And he makes them swear an oath of loyalty to him. And that effectively becomes the new government structure, the new authority structure in England. So this is a whole new era. And it's weird because you're jamming a French-speaking court and a French-speaking king into an old English-speaking, somewhat Viking-influenced independent island, and it's very, very clumsy putting this together. But in those days, in the Middle Ages, how do you pick the next king?
Swords.
Well, ideally, you want to avoid that. What's the plan to avoid it coming to swords?
Oh, just not hierarchy, ancestry.
Yeah, that's right. You just have the obvious successor become king. So like if the king has an oldest son, well, then that guy's just the king when the king dies. And it's very, very easy. But lifespans are a little shorter. Wars are happening all the time. Confusing alliances made through marriages occur. And sometimes you have what's called a succession crisis. And what that is right there in the name. So after a few hundred years of trying to figure out what it's like to unify these two worlds across the English Channel, things get a little bit clumsy. In England, you've got people Rattle and the Saber to the north. That's your Braveheart, William Wallace stuff in the 1200s. And the dynasty there is also under stress because they feel like they have some claims on the continent because of their connections through William, Duke of Normandy. So who are they loyal to there? William, Duke of Normandy or the King of France? And so that question lingers for a couple hundred years. Well, at any rate, did you see Braveheart?
Yeah, it's been forever.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. There's a real pretty lady in Braveheart. I think she was played by Sophie Marceau, and she plays Princess Isabella of France.
Okay.
And she marries, if I remember right, in the movie, and I think this is reflective of reality, she marries Edward II. So Edward I is the grumpy guy. Edward the Longshanks. He's maybe one of the most prominent leaders in the English dynasty called the Plantagenet dynasty. I think I'm saying that right. It's the English version of it anyway. And what happens is the French are really cool with marrying off their fourth child. The French king marries off his fourth child, Isabella, to Edward II. I think I'm getting this right, because he's got 3 sons.
For power, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're going to smooth things out after years of not quite being sure where you draw the boundaries on the continent between English stuff and French stuff. So you got 3 sons. There should be no risk of confusion as to who becomes king next, right?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. And as we get into the 1300s, all of those sons start to die. And so Louis, I can't remember all their names, probably another Charles, whatever the case, all the sons of Philip IV of France, from a dynasty called the Capetian dynasty, they all die. And so they don't have sons either. They were just all briefly king. And so now all that's left is this daughter, Isabella, who's married to the English king and who has produced an offspring.
Okay, so that would make a kind of a power crisis on the French side, because it's like, hey, we were important, but now my only heir is a female, which mattered back then, and she has produced an offspring over on the islands over there, and therefore my offspring, like my power, has gone to the wrong side.
Correct. It all backfired, and everybody wakes up one day and gets out their little apps on their phones. It's like, who should be king next calculator, and they start entering their data and everything, and then all at once it all comes up the same. Oh crap, the king of France is Edward III of England. Uh-oh. And so what do you do if you're France in that situation? Or you just be like, well, I guess the wrong people died at the wrong time and now we're owned by the throne of England? Or do you make up new rules? Well, what would you do?
Yeah, when did this happen? Like what? Like in relation to the combat of the 30, where are we talking at? Is this
getting
before?
close? About 25-ish years before the combat of the 30.
Oh, holy cow. Okay, I'm starting to understand. This makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're the French, you're like, hey, Isabella, I would really like to visit my grandson at holiday. Would you please bring him over here?
Right.
Yeah, that's what you start thinking.
But, yeah, because we want to take him on a picnic.
Yeah.
In the country to show him how pretty France is. Don't worry, he'll be back.
So do you think there's ill intent and they want to kill him?
Well, I don't know that they want to kill Edward III. That's not really good for relations either. Ultimately, what they do is the nobility puts their heads together in France, and they're like, well, the Capetian dynasty was pretty dang cool. And those were the good old days, and maybe theoretically, Edward III of England is the rightful heir to the throne held by the Capetian dynasty of France, but we're just going to make a new dynasty. And so they do. They create a new dynasty called the Valois. I think you say it Valois. I'm awful at French.
I think what's important is after you say it, you have to go, ha, ha, ha.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a horizontal striped shirt and a baguette on my shoulder. Just picture
Excellent.
that.
So
Perfect.
How do they do that? How do they decide, okay, which of us is king? It has to be a power thing.
I don't know. I don't remember their process. And so I could make stuff up. But the truth is, I don't remember how they picked. I don't remember what the rationale was. I know that somewhere in the 1320s, some cousin or somebody related to somebody from somewhere made the most sense to be chosen as the successor. And so now you've got effectively a new dynasty that has begun out of the clear blue sky in France.
that's a big stinking deal because you have all these people in this land that's probably not incredibly united because of the way communication worked back then. And all of a sudden you just go around and you're like, hey, we're the new boss, I promise. That's got to be weird.
It is weird. And on top of that, I've heard all kinds of statistics, and I don't trust any of them, but that the percentage of people who would ever even lay eyes on their king is minuscule at any given time in the Middle Ages. Like, people couldn't tell you what they looked like. If the king you walked in and hung around, you wouldn't know. It's why there's that one moment in the Shakespeare play from one of the Henrys, and most of those plays are about the 100 Years' War, where the king is able to go through his ranks in disguise and nobody knows who the king is, and he's able to take the temperature of the army, because how would you know?
Yeah.
How would you know what the guy looks like? I mean, Judas had to kiss Jesus so the Romans would know which guy it was they were supposed to arrest. I mean, there's no pictures. Kind of something we take for granted, right?
Yeah, I never thought about that.
So you're making a pretty dramatic shift in loyalty here, and whatever the case, if you're France, come on, dude, there's no way you're going to be like, well, the right people died at the right time. I guess we're just out of the country now. Bummer. Like, you're going to fight. And if you're England, you're like, wait a minute, pals. You take that risk when you marry off a daughter to a foreign country for peace. That is the risk you take when you want peace with us. And by all legal rights, we have a claim on France. And so Edward III begins to style himself. One of his titles is King of France.
Whoa.
You know what I'm talking about when I say a style or a title, right? Like that list of things that people recite off.
Yeah. Breaker of chains.
Yes, exactly that. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, if you want to understand the Middle Ages, just watch Game of Thrones and don't bring the kids.
Okay, Matt, we're joking about all this, but do you remember when you were here in Alabama and we actually did announce ourselves to the room at that dinner party?
That was a magnificent dinner party. I had on my nice jacket.
Yeah, exactly. So I still have that audio. Do you want to just play that right now?
I think people would really enjoy hearing what that was like.
Okay, let's do it. Hear ye, Sir Matthew of House Whitman, slayer of trout, flogger of bears, preserver of the manatee, knower of history, the father of chinchillas. Bend the knee and acknowledge that you are in the presence of greatness.
Hear ye, hear ye. Rise to honor Lord Destin of House Sandlin, the callously analytical, launcher of rockets,
Oh yeah, I'll take that.
tweeter of tweets,
Sometimes I do that.
finder of marsupials, repeller of fish, and disappointer of women.
Why would you say that?
Acknowledge him with some sort of hand gesture now.
I said nice things about you. I don't know what. Why are people flicking me off?
This is the list I was given, and it's flip.
Bequeather of Skittles. I don't know what it means to bequeath. Are you allowed to bequeath Skittles?
What would be your nickname? Yeah, absolutely. I bequeathed a ton of Skittles. What would be your nickname though? Because, like a lot of these people have like nicknames, like Charles Martel, the Hammer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, like, I don't know, like if that lady in Australia came up with your list of heraldic titles, unfortunately, it would be Destin of House Sandlin, the Shovelhead.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah,
Which I'm against.
The lady on the radio show that she goes, this guy Destin, he's got a great video, but he has a bit of a shovel head.
He's got a bit of a shovel head, doesn't he?
This episode of Notable Questions is sponsored by Away, first class luggage at a coach price. It is my favorite piece of luggage that I own. I mean, everything about it's great. You like yours, don't you, Matt?
I do, and actually I have it unfolded on my bed right now, and I am almost done packing it because we've got a little trip coming up, and it is my go-to luggage, hands down, no questions asked. Absolute favorite I've ever owned.
What is it that you like about it?
I like the fact that I can pack like a moron, and some genius engineer designed the thing so that unlike other suitcases where I have to mash the thing together and do pitched physical combat with it to get it to close, like it doesn't matter how stupidly I pack. The way the compartment's designed, it just goes together without the stand on top of the suitcase treatment.
Yeah, they've got that little turnbuckle thing where you pull it tighter and it'll press your clothes down. And then the other side has the zipper compartment where you can this is what I do. I go to wherever I'm going, and as I'm pulling clothes out and wearing them, there's this other side that I can zip clothes, and I put my dirty clothes in that side. Do you do that?
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah. Anyway, I spend a lot of time in airports, and a lot of times the biggest problem I have is my phone dying. I can no longer communicate or do work, and so the fact that it has a built-in USB phone charger directly in the bag, and even before you put it up in the overhead compartment in the airplane, you can pop the phone charger out and hold it in your hand. It's like a little, I don't know how to explain it. You just push it, and it pops out of the suitcase. It's well-engineered luggage. I love it.
Yeah, likewise. And when we've talked about Away before, I've told you that I have some sort of unhealthy obsession with casters that work properly, whether they be on shopping carts or, well, in this case, a bag that I wheel through the airport with me. I feel like I am some sort of Mary Poppins type character with it because I stand the handle straight upright, and instead of dragging it behind me and having it get kicked over and flop over,
it's almost like it floats.
I hold it next to me like a pal, and it just glides right along with me, and I feel more sophisticated than everybody else in the airport.
Well, there's two things about that. So you have a bearing on the wheel so that it can pivot. Like the wheel pivots so that it's moving in the direction that you're moving. They have a very good bearing on each wheel for that on the Away bag, but they also have a really good bearing on the wheel itself. So you have two different axes of bearings that are awesome, and that allows you to just push it alongside. Sometimes what I'll do is, I went down a really, really long tunnel. I would push the bag out in front of me and then fiddle with my hands and do whatever it is I had to do. And I would just go catch up with my bag because I know it's going to go at a pretty similar pace to what I'm doing.
Dude, that does something to me.
Yeah.
I really like casters.
Anyway, we've got a promo code. If you want an Away bag, you can get $20 off a suitcase by visiting awaytravel.com/NDQ2019 and use the promo code NDQ2019 during checkout.
And that's just the number 2019.
Yeah.
Right in orders. You don't have to spell anything out or anything. And here's the thing about that. If you go to awaytravel.com/NDQ2019 and use the promo code NDQ2019 and you get one of these things, you've got 100 days to travel with it. These people are smart. They know that people aren't necessarily traveling every single day. And so there's this great big window of time to try it on a couple different trips, get a feel for it. Because Destin had talked about it so much, I thought I would like it. But after one trip, I was like, yeah, no way I'm giving this back. This is my favorite bag. And I think you're going to feel the same way.
So YouTube actually gave me one as a gift for Christmas. I have no idea how they knew that it was my favorite bag, but I started looking on social media, and a lot of my friends got them too. I don't know what the criteria was for who got one and who didn't, but they gave me an Away bag with Smarter Every Day, monogrammed on the side of the thing. It's awesome. It was the gift of choice from YouTube to people they were trying to do nice things to this year. They know
impress. Yeah.
Yeah. They know that we travel a lot. I'm super excited about it. You can get any size you want by going to that website. You can get the carry-on, the bigger carry-on with a pocket for your laptop. There's all kinds of different options. You're going to be happy. You can change colors. There's a lot to select there. I don't know. I'm super happy with it. I think you'll enjoy it.
And one other note about that charger, I think I've only put a charge on that thing maybe once.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe twice. This is not like go to the convenience store and grab some junky thing that's overpriced. This will be your go-to mobile power block. It's not an afterthought. The bag is really designed around this thing. It's very, very effective, and it lasts. Get you through a whole trip and more.
I've actually used it to, my Nintendo Switch that I sometimes play with on airplanes. It was going dead, and I actually used the battery to power the Switch on the plane.
And still had battery left after. So obviously, thank you to Away for partnering with us to make this podcast happen. You will love your Away bag if you go and grab one of these. It's $20 off a suitcase. Awaytravel.com/NDQ2019 and then NDQ2019 during checkout is the promo code.
Seriously, you will love the Away bag if you get one and you get to Mary Poppins through airports like we do. It's awesome. Anyway, let's get back to chivalry. I actually had a nickname one time. This really cool guy, his name was Sarge. His real name was Don, but everybody called him Sarge, and he ran the missile range. You did what Sarge said at all times. And I found favor with Sarge because I would play a game called Tonk, Tonk. I'd play Tonk with him at lunch. and he took to calling me Cletus. I don't know why. Hey, Cletus, go on down range and pick up that blah, blah, blah. And one day, in a quiet moment, I was sitting up at the blockhouse with Sarge, and we were just chatting. I was like, hey, why do you call me Cletus? I've just always wondered. He goes, oh, I don't know. And that broke the spell. He didn't call me Cletus after that. And it felt,
What?
I was like, man, why did I mess with that? It was such a cool thing. You know what I mean?
Well, that's enormously disappointing.
Yeah, I know. I broke the spell. So anyway, have you ever had any nicknames before we get back to nobility and all this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In high school, my nickname was Diplomat.
Diplo. Matt.
Yeah, which I thought was better than like laundromat or anything. But
Like, isn't Diplo a rapper? Or Duplo? What? Who?
I don't know. Maybe like I think. Aren't you thinking of Legos?
God, I sound so old right now.
I don't know, dude. I'm just gonna embarrass myself.
Anyway, so Edward II, King of France.
Yeah, that's what matters. And his kid by Isabella, Edward III. Whatever the case, starting in 1328, you got this rivalry, and it's probably going to get settled out. So, I don't know. I guess I'll do the quick version. It looks like both sides, well, not both sides. It looks like the English are going to want resolution because they feel like they're owed territory. The Plantagenet house, which is the house of the English kings, once again, I think they're from Anjou. I don't even know if I say that right, but that's all of the connection is all like northern France. So you're going to have this struggle, and it's going to involve a bunch of these northern former mini kingdoms that are now reconciled with France, or maybe even under the authority of France. And this is where your Combat of the 30 comes in, that I really didn't know anything about. And what year did you say this happened again?
It happened in 1351.
Okay, 1351. So one of the things that I saw in the little article that I read about this Combat of the 30 is that it was like what started the 100 Years' War. And apparently that just wasn't a good article, because that's not true, because one of the 4 big battles of the 100 Years' War happened in the 1340s, and that was the Battle of Crécy. That's Edward III went and prosecuted that battle himself. It was a big English victory. But I think what happened, and I'm speculating a little bit here, I think what happened is there was a domino effect of mini succession crises, as the English are trying to assert their ownership and English lords are asserting their ownership over France. And so the Combat of the 30 is over Brittany, right? Not the person, the region of France.
Oh, it's in France.
Yeah.
So Brittany's in France.
Oh,
God.
yeah, that is confusing. Okay, so we call people from Brittany Bretons.
Okay.
But Bretons are not Britons, they're Bretons. Does that make sense?
No.
It's not Ryan, it's Rhine. Okay.
Okay, so I'm pulling the exact location of the battle up on the map. So this is in France.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is, so if you were to go straight south from London, you would have to go to the west. So it's like
Yes.
this little thing, like as you enter the English Channel from the Atlantic Ocean, like the first place, like if you were to draw a line between the landmass up in the British Isles down to France, it's on that little part that juts out. That's where this battle happened.
Yes, there's a little part that sticks out of northwest France, and that's Brittany.
Okay.
And the adjective for things having to do with Brittany is Breton, which is confusing because it's on the continent and it's not Britain. But we're tracking now, right?
Yep, with you.
Okay. This place, and I don't know when it changed, but this place had been an independent set of little kingdoms that had coagulated into a larger kingdom, maybe about 1000 AD, something like that. And eventually they end up being wholly enveloped into France, but it's not that simple. France is not France is not France. Throughout history, those boundaries, of course, evolved. And so what you've got is an opportunistic English guy from House Montfort who wants to go and unseat the, I guess you'd say it, Blois family? Blois? How would you say that?
I don't know, man. Blois?
Let's just go with Blois, because I think the Blois family, that sounds better. I'm
Charles of
going with
Blois.
And so this Combat of the 30 that you were describing, I think is a micro succession or usurpation attempt that gets settled out between a couple of dudes. And the Montforts, by the way, have you ever heard that name before?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've heard Montfort and Son, but that's Mumford and Son, so not the band. But this whole thing to me feels like a mini Hatfield versus McCoy thing. It feels like like just a feud between angry families. It's what it feels like. Of course, it's much bigger than that, but I mean, humans are mean. we always fight, and we always pick an enemy, and we double down on whoever that enemy is. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. And I don't know the history of tension between the Montforts and Blois families. What I know is that the Montforts had been a prominent name, that now, at this point in history, the 1300s, they're supported by the English. But I think that was a French family for the longest time, and they were a prominent family in the Crusades. In fact, I think the Montforts got awarded significant holdings in the Holy Land after maybe like the first or third crusade, something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's still Montfort connections in the Eastern Mediterranean even to this day, because those Crusader states, they didn't go away until after Napoleon. All those little kingdoms that were founded by French people and English people who went down on crusade, it lasted.
Holy cow!
Long.
There is I'm looking it up right now. There's a Montfort castle in Israel.
Is there really?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Did you know that, or did you just infer that?
I did not know that.
Good job, Matt. I'm impressed. No joke.
Thanks, man.
Montfort Castle, Castle of the Little Horn, is a ruined Crusader castle in the Upper Galilee region of northern Israel. Not going to lie, quite impressed.
Yeah, I think Simon de Montfort was the member of that family, of the family that was successful there on crusade.
Golly, dude, you have a deep well that you're drawing this information from. Like, when did you study this information? This is not something you just I just read it on Wikipedia. Like, you're drawing from a deep well.
Well, I mean, this is what I did, man. I taught this kind of history at a college in Nebraska.
Really? Like medieval history?
Well, it's what I liked the most. So I probably put the most effort into classical and medieval history in terms of survey stuff, and a lot of that sticks. There's still things though that you get this little echo in your brain where you're like, I think I had knowledge about that once, but I don't think I do anymore. And then something jogs it, and it kind of pops back in there.
I'm just going to tell you, good job, dude. I'm impressed.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, whatever the case, you got these two rival claimants, and they're going to fight it out. And now I throw it back to you. You know a lot about warfare. Is this a good way to sort these things out, or is it just fun and fanciful to imagine this as a nice gesture?
I think this is probably the best case scenario, like a way to settle a conflict. If you're going to settle a conflict with violence, like making it as fair of a fight as possible. And by fair, I mean everybody's equipped with the same stuff. They get to pick whoever they want to bring them to the battle. It's like a Nerf gun I play with my kids. I never play fair. Do you play fair when you're doing Nerf battle with your kids?
What does playing not fair look like? I mean, what are you, pistol whipping them?
No.
Surprise, sucker.
No, I know tricks they don't. And I use those tricks when it's time to do it. So, I mean, for example.
Wait, what tricks are there in Nerf gun fights?
Dude, you can totally take the pressure regulator out of a Nerf gun. Do you know that?
I've certainly heard about people modding Nerf guns, but I don't know how one would do that.
Okay, so basically the way a Nerf gun works is when you cock the pistol, there's a spring in there that drives a piston, and the piston forces air down into an orifice, and the orifice blasts air into the back of the Nerf dart. That's how it works.
Okay.
The effusion rate of the gas is regulated by that hole, and sometimes that hole has a little valve on it so that it'll only blast air into it for a certain amount of time. There's different designs and different things. But we did this Nerf battle one time, and they had all these like big Nerf guns, and they gave me you remember in Men in Black where they hand
the noisy cricket?
Exactly, the cricket pistol. So we got an off-brand Nerf gun, And they gave it to me one time, and it's a single shot. You cock it once, and you put a dart on there. But little did they know, I had modified the Cricket Nerf gun so that it could fire like twice as hard as anything else. And we had a crisis at the house one time because one of my kids started crying after a Nerf battle because they got hurt. And in their minds, they were emotionally hurt. They weren't physically hurt. And I said, we actually put the Nerf guns up for a while. I was like, I'm sorry. My job as daddy is to protect you. And if this hurts you enough to cry, then I must, for the sake of our family, I must put up the Nerf weapons. and so the whole idea there was, you know what the lesson was. If you're going to do a Nerf war, don't cry. That was the lesson.
That's right.
But, I did it under the...
But you modded a gun. So they're crying because their rocket scientist engineered dad, who tests weapons of defensive war, modified a Nerf gun to inflict more pain on his child.
Well, they knew
I think that kid should be allowed to cry, and I think the Nerf gun should still be out.
Well, I don't care what you think because you don't fight fair. We just don't. Nobody fights fair. That's why it's called a fight. Like, the interesting thing about war is that it's literally you're fighting for survival.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of. A lot of times you're fighting for resources or for power or things like that. But when you get right down to it, you're fighting to not die, right? Of course, that metaphor doesn't hold true with the Nerf war, but you know what I'm trying to say. For example, laser tag. You remember that time we played laser tag?
I don't even remember who won.
It was you, Matt.
Oh.
I'm surprised you don't remember that and made me say it out loud.
I don't hold on to things like that.
I'm sure you don't. Why did you win? Why did you win?
Because I took a sweatshirt and put it over all the sensors of all my guns so no one could hit me.
Did you really?
No, of course I didn't. That would be an awful example to my children. No, I won because of superior skill and strategy.
Okay, cool. But if you saw the kid out in the open, what did you do? You just went for him, right?
Well, absolutely. You just light them up. I mean, it's just easy pickings.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. There's something when you're at battle with another human, there's something carnal that happens in your brain. Like lizard brain takes over and it's like survival. Here we go.
And before you round out this thought, let me just point out that you finished like one hit behind me. So it wasn't like you were going around being Mr. Dad, like, well, I wouldn't want to shoot the kids. I wouldn't want to go lizard brain. We were both lizard brained.
Dude, if I had thought ahead, I would have snuck like a Swarovski, whatever you call that, the crystal. I would have snuck a crystal in there and put it in front of my laser gun and made the spreader from Contra out of laser. That would totally work, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
No, nobody wants the fire beam. Nobody wants the lasers. Spread's all that matters.
Do you think that would work?
Why wouldn't it? I don't know. Would that light diffuse so much that you'd lose a ton of range?
I don't know, man. We got to try that. Like the kids have these little off-brand laser gun things that they got
We do
for
too.
Christmas.
I wonder if we have the same ones.
Is it the white ones that have the little pack that you put on or whatever?
No, ours are pretty fancy. We got them from my sister-in-law, who is awesome. So
Wow.
no, we don't have the same ones, but I'll bring them. You can try them out. They're cool.
Yeah, we should do that. Anyway, I got to try the crystal spreader Contra method for laser guns. Anyway, long story short, when it comes to battle, you're going to do what you got to do in order to win. And so the thing that's so interesting to me about the combat of the 30 is they got together and they decided on rules for combat. Like, here's how we're going to do it. You each get 30 people, pick whatever you want. And it's my understanding that on the French side, they picked how many knights? Was it 20?
Oh, I don't know. I've got to defer to you on a lot of this combat of the 30 stuff.
Okay, I've got the list right in front of me. So on the French side, so we have Sir Jean de Beaumanoir, Sir Oliver Arel, Sir Caron de Bosdegas, Sir Geoffrey de Bois, Sir, how do you say Yves? How do you pronounce that?
Eves?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so long story short, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 knights on the French side. And we still know their names.
Jean or Jean de Beaumanoir is the head guy on the French side. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Beaumanoir, got it.
Yep. He's Constable of Brittany, Governor of Jocelyn.
Oh,
Okay, so
okay.
you got 10 knights on the
Writing that
French
down.
Breton force, Breton,
Yeah.
and you have 20 squires, and we actually know their names, which is really cool and fun. On the Anglo-Breton force, which my understanding would represent the English side, right?
Yeah, these would be French-ish people with English connections supported by the English for the most part.
So the head dude is Sir Robert Bemborough, captain of Ploermel, which I think is a cool word. Ploermel. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 knights on their
I've never
side.
heard of that location. Ploermel. Ploermel.
Yeah, and the E has the umlaut on top of the 2 dots.
Oh, okay.
Is
Yeah,
two-
I have no idea. I have no idea where that place even is. I'll
2
have to look
dots
that
is
up
the
at some
umlaut,
point.
right?
I don't know.
Okay.
Man, that's like 5 things in a row that reveal my ignorance.
Whatever. Okay, so you just guessed that there would be a castle in Israel based on knowledge from the 12th century or 13th century, whatever it was. I'm impressed. You don't have to worry about looking ignorant. You look pretty good right now.
Okay,
So we
all
got
right, thank you.
10 knights on the French side, 7 knights on the British side, 23 squires on the British side, squires and men-at-arms. So my question to you is, what is the difference in a knight, which I think I have a pretty good handle on, and a squire?
Yeah, a squire is stage 2 of getting ready to be a knight. So I can't say that for sure in the 14th century, though.
So it's like a Pokemon that's at its second level.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So a page would be round 1 of becoming a knight. And this would be like a little kid who's assigned to a knight, not even an apprentice. Their job is like maybe clean things up. I don't even know what a page does. They're just observing. They're a little kid. A squire would be maybe a teenager, an early teenager whose job is to clean up the armor, take care of the horse, make sure the weapons are all in good repair. I think a squire's job was to bury the knight if the knight died, to arrange for transport of the body. And I think a squire, like their Eagle Scout project was to go to war with a knight. And I don't know if they would participate or what happened, but if you demonstrated that you could handle your business on or around the battlefield, then you might get dubbed a knight. You might get that next promotion. You might evolve to the next level of Pokemon.
Got it. So what these guys did is they decided they were going to fight at this one location, which was between their 2 strongholds. And they said, okay, we're going to fight with swords, daggers, spears, and axes. So they chose the weapons, which is interesting to me. So like,
Which is awesome. And notice that there are no ranged weapons.
yeah, no arrows, no, what do you call the thing that pulls people off of a horse?
Well, I think there are a few different things that pull people off of a horse, but the term I used in the last episode was a halberd, but I don't know that a lot of people use that yet at this point.
Oh,
A halberd is like a hooked axe. So even like a pole hook would be something that would pull somebody off of a horse, but you don't really need it because nobody's on a horse.
Oh, I don't think that's true. Well, we'll learn about that later. So anyway, the sides line up and they start fighting, right? And they start going at it. And after a certain period of time, they stop. And they stop to see how many people were dead, right? They're like, man, this fighting's hard. We should take a break. And they stopped halfway through the day for like watered down Kool-Aid and those little cookies that you got at Vacation Bible School when you were a kid.
Capri Suns. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Lorna
about.
Doones. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so they stopped halfway through the day and they're like, it's time for refreshments. And like people came out to watch this battle. Like,
And there were dead people laying there during refreshment time, right?
yeah. So at one point they decided to take this cookie time. And at this point, there were 4 dead on the French side and 2 dead on the English side. But both
Have
sides
you ever eaten cookies around 6 dead people?
I have not.
No, me neither.
What do you think? They said, okay, it says both sides were exhausted and they agreed to take a break for refreshments and bandaging their injuries. And we get this from some writer named Froissart, Froissart.
Yeah, that I saw. Okay, we need to come back to that point. The source question is interesting. But go ahead.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that everybody's fighting and then they're like, okay, can we stop? Time out. It's like in Wayne's World where they're like, car. So just the whole concept of timeout in battle, that's interesting. Because you're fighting someone who wants you to die. And at some point you're like, can we not poke each other with large spears and daggers and swords and axes for just a couple of minutes while we have cookie time? Yeah, cool, let's do that. And everybody started bandaging themselves, and they're getting ready so they can fight harder.
Why do you think they did that?
I think they were tired.
Yeah.
But think about that. You're one of these knights or squires, and you've been fighting for hours. And like your buddy is dead. And you look over there and he's like laying down dead. And then you're sitting there sipping on your Capri Sun. And then you're like, okay, well, cool. When we get refreshed here, we're going to go poke each other with spears again. And that might be me in a couple of minutes. That's got to be a really weird feeling. Like, I would have thought things like, what are we fighting for? Like, do I really want my people to have this much power? Like, is it really, really, really important that we win this? I don't know. I mean, what goes through your head at that point?
Have you ever, in school, at work, I don't know, been around a group of people who you fit in with and who you like, and they just value something? And even though it might not be your thing, you gradually get into it because that's the currency, the social currency of that social group.
What do you mean? Like New Kids on the Block?
Yeah. I've had friends who are into like different sports or different music or whatever, and that's who I hang out with, and so I understand that's kind of the currency. We're all buying this product, we're all doing this thing, and we compare notes on that. And eventually, even though it's not necessarily my thing, it's something that I take seriously and understand the value of. I mean, maybe you're more independent than me. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I remember there being some kids growing up that were into skateboarding, and I thought it was cool, but I knew I couldn't do it, and I just didn't really have an interest in it. But I was interested enough to try to learn all the terminology so I could have a conversation with them, but I had no interest in learning how to skateboard or doing an ollie or a whatever.
Or whatever, right.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that any skateboarder has actually ever completed a skateboard trick. I've hung around with a lot of them. It seems like it never actually works.
Yeah.
I don't know. The internet may prove me wrong.
Yeah, dude, did you see the other day? Tommy did a double fakey no-fo tuna salad just after a triple ollie.
Like almost, though. Almost.
Yeah, he almost landed
It was
that.
almost. So, if you understand societal pressure, and if you understand those things in your social brain that are, you know, somewhat optional. I wore a ball cap into the lobby of an Eastern Orthodox church on an off day in a video recently, and most people were like, well, it's a lobby, and I don't know, that doesn't seem that weird. People from the South and from Greece thought that was really weird. And
It
were
made
put
me
off
feel
by it.
weird. You wore a hat into church, even if it's not the kind of church I understand.
Wow, yeah.
Like, come on, man.
That's not weird for us at all. Everybody wears, I mean, all the elders wear hats at elder meetings at church. I mean, everybody wears a hat. I don't know. It's not weird, but I'm from the West, and we just have a totally different set of, our social brain is different.
And what's
apparently.
interesting is I have no idea why I feel that way. Zero clue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people will try and make some case for a verse about attending church that vaguely relates, but it's just not there. It's just an old social form of respect in certain cultures and not in other cultures. So, you know, whatever. I respect people's offendedness. That's fine. The point is we've got lightly held things in our social brain, and then we have deeply held things in our social brain, the things that are the fabric of our connectedness to other people. And that tie that bound society together in the feudal Middle Ages was oaths, promises. The whole thing was held together by the idea of having honor in keeping a promise. Now, the promise might be idiotic, and you might demonstrate honor in the stupidest, most self-destructive, imaginable way, but if it's honor, you kind of have to do it. And you and I have talked about this before, but it was actually during the 100 Years' War that idea of honor and chivalry got put to the test, ultimately stressed so hard that it fractured and broke at the Battle of Agincourt. And really, you can divide Western history almost at that point between the honor era and the post-honor or modified honor era that came after. It's when the West moved from being an honor society to something else. So these guys they're going to go do this fight because this is everything their brain says. This is the most morally right thing ever.
Can I stop you there? Because I want to pull that thread a little bit. So what happened? So when you say the honor era and the post-honor era, can you please explain that?
Well, the thing that bound society together after the decline and absorption of the Roman Empire in Europe, the classical era, as that gave way to the medieval era, all the way up through the late Middle Ages that we're talking about here, the thing that held it together was promises. I mean, a lot of historians argue that after Rome, the story of the next 1,000 years of Europe is trying to recapture a sense of order and sanity that was provided by a huge, massive, powerful, legally structured central government. So in Rome, law is what provided order. Not so much honor. People did shifty stuff all the time in Rome. I mean, that's why those stories are so fun of the Roman Empire and the late Republic and all of that stuff. It was law-based, and weaseling within the law was kind of part of the fun of what those people did. Whereas in the Middle Ages, the law was a little more fluid. It depended more on a local lord because there weren't these gigantic, overarching empires that provided a uniform code of law to everybody. And even if there were, there wouldn't be armies that would be funded or trained well enough to make giant cross-continental treks to go and enforce such laws. So as a result, law had a lot more to do with religious notions and the idea that the local authority, the lord or the king, had some sort of divine right to make law happen. So it's a little different flavor in these two eras, and I think what you see happening in the 100 Years' War is this: the only way we're going to keep society together is through certain promises that you just can't break, and if you do break them, you're an oath breaker and you just can't participate in society. It gives way to, I mean, the 100 Years' War generates enough military force and might and expands the role of these kings in these two respective countries to the point where maybe it does become more practical for the reach of the throne to go far enough that you can return to something that's more like a legalistic society, more so than an honor society based on vows and promises. Does that make more sense?
It does, but the thing it sparked in my mind when you said we had the honor era and the post-honor era is that right now I've heard the term thrown around post-truth.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and so what you're telling me, and I'm accepting it as true because I don't understand this period of time in history, and you do.
Hold that thought. True has to go in quotes here because all of this kind of history, this big picture evaluation stuff, it's opinion rooted in evidence.
Okay.
And somebody smart could argue something different about this. This is how I see it.
Understood. That's why I said I'm accepting it as true. So and I can do air quotes with you if you'd like. But the thing is, you're saying there's this pivotal moment, possibly, where you start with an honor type society and we're moving to a post-honor society. I feel like for the last however long, truth mattered.
Right.
And we had ways to, if you really think about it, we've had photography for 200 years.
Not quite.
And we've had the ability to provide evidence. We can provide evidence for things that happened, and it's not to be argued. Well, we've got it on film, literally. Or, then we had this short period of time where we had digital film. Oh, man, I just realized we might be able to go back to actual film as a way to get around deepfakes. Interesting.
Wait, what?
You know what deepfakes are, right?
Huh?
Okay, I'm sorry. I just had an actual aha moment right there in that conversation.
Okay, I've got a pin and like 3 things before that, and I'm going to remember where the pin is.
Okay, got it. So if you think about it, we have enjoyed for the last 200 years-ish the ability to prove things with pictures,
right?
With film. We then transitioned to digital images, and we've enjoyed the ability to prove things with digital images and audio for a short period of time. Now, there's these things coming out called deepfakes. Basically, artificial intelligence has the ability to superimpose my face on your body in a digital video, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It appears that these deepfakes things were generated for nefarious purposes, where people wanted to superimpose heads on other people's bodies for bad reasons. And so we are entering this era of time here where we can no longer trust images and film and audio because we have abilities to generate them out of thin air, and they're so convincible that they can get past the human filter to determine if something's true or not. So I just realized that we are entering this new era of time, this post-truth era, where it's more difficult to trust these things. So you said there was this honor era and this post-honor. Now we're going from truth that we could prove with film and audio and evidence. We're moving into this new era where it's easier to fake things than it was and fool people. So that makes me wonder what's about to happen. It's going to break. We're going to have to go to something else. But what is that something else going to be? Okay.
Well, the last time the whole honor and we have an agreement on what truth is thing broke, or the time that we're talking about here, what was followed was much more force. Because if you can't agree on truth, it's going to come down to who has the bigger sword.
Dang, man, that's freaking scary.
It's very scary. And I continue to be frustrated that everybody lectures everybody on how history is and read your history books from all sides and whatever. I get that everybody has their own interpretations. But it's not hard to understand that in an absence of unity or basic agreement on reality, or even if a respect for other people's read on reality, in an absence of that, there will be blood to sort out the questions. History's demonstrated that again and again, and this just isn't a good road to go down. People will hurt people, and I'm against that. You're right to be concerned, is my point.
Okay, that's a pretty long rabbit trail, by the way.
Yeah.
We're back to the combat of the 30. So they've had this war / mini battle in the beginning of the day. I call it a war because if we've all agreed that this is going to settle what happens, then it's basically a war, right?
But wouldn't tournament be a better word?
I think it is.
I mean, really, this is a medieval tournament. It's just a medieval tournament with stakes.
Yeah, but I mean, essentially it's a proxy war. That's what was agreed to. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way, but that's what the people that entered into this agreement said it was. So they started poking each other with sticks. They took a little break for their Capri Suns and watered down Kool-Aid and their little cookies that they could put on their finger like a ring and eat the outside edges off. I have fond memories of that.
I see what you're doing. Okay, yeah, I can picture the cookie.
Yeah. You know the one I'm talking about? It looks like a flower with a hole in the middle?
I absolutely do.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they took the break, and then they got back to battle. You know, they're looking around. They have the dead. They're the 4 dead on the French side and 2 on the English side, and they get back to poking each other with sticks. And not long after they resumed this battle, the English leader, Bemborough, was wounded and killed in battle.
Okay.
And so at that point, it's like, oh, what the heck? You know, our leader just got killed. Stuff just got serious. And so my understanding of what happened after that is the English, they kind of went into this defensive posture. They kind of balled up and they said, okay, we're going to work together and we're going to be more defensive. And the French would just come around and start attacking that. And
which is smart on their part. When you've got similar numbers and similar leadership, you can do, or similar numbers and your commander and your leader is in play, you can do more complex things militarily. When that leader goes down and is no longer there to evaluate the battlefield and call out commands, the smarter thing to do is to assume a more defensive position.
So they say there was this German soldier called Crochart, I think, is how
Sounds
you say
good.
that. And they said he was the one that was rallying people. And the question is, why is there a German guy there? And the English side had several German mercenaries in their fight as well. Anyway, they kept doing this, and then at the
A
end...
long-standing tradition, by the way.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, when Washington
Oh, yeah.
made his maneuver in on Christmas Day of whatever that was, 70-something,
I thought it was Christmas Eve, wasn't it?
was Christmas Eve, but the conflict went into Christmas, the wee hours of Christmas morning. Battle of Trenton and Princeton, right?
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah, the German Hessians were working with the British, but there's a connection there as well because the Hanover Kings, so like George III, was actually, they were German. So that's another connection across the channel that had implications. So the point is, it's not that weird historically. There are a bunch of incidents where we see this kind of thing happening. At any rate, proceed.
So the whole battle, war, tournament, whatever we're calling it, was decided by this one person. It was a squire on the French side. I can't even say his name. Guillaume
Merle.
de Montauban.
Guillaume?
I don't know how to say it.
Guillaume. I think it's like the French version of William, if I'm hearing you right.
According to everything that's written down, or at least the two sources that I checked, one of them being Wikipedia, so let's just full disclosure there, he got on his horse and he charged the line, the English line, and he broke it. And they said he took down like 7 of the major English combatants, like the people that were the big fighters. He took down 7 of them. And I don't know if that means they just knocked them down for a brief period of time and they were able to break the line. I don't know what that means.
And the little article that I read acknowledged that some guy got on a horse and that happened. Did anything you found, is that allowed?
Everybody said it was against the rules.
Well, okay. Oh, okay. So that's why nobody was doing it the whole time.
Right.
And it's why they didn't pick weapons that would be good against that kind of an attack. Got it.
Yeah, so this dude jumps on a horse and he's like, screw this, I'm getting a horse. And he just goes at him, right? So he broke the rules. But at the end of the day, nobody cared. They're like, okay, cool, we're done. The battle's over. The French won. But I don't understand what happened because everybody celebrates the combat of the 30 as this height of chivalry where everybody played by the rules and we went out like noblemen and we fought and we, several of us died on the field of battle and we had a noble battle. But it ends with somebody cheating. Somebody
Right.
changed the fusion rate of his Nerf dart gun and just broke the lines and broke the will of the other side and beat them. But still today and afterwards, everybody lauded this event as this height of genteel war.
Is it possible that view of this little combat was maybe read into it after the fact as people were, okay, let me frame it like this. So from 1350 to 1450 something, whenever the 100 Years' War ended, you've got 3 more big battles after Crécy. Crécy is the one that predates the combat of the 30 that we're talking about. You have Poitiers, and then you have Agincourt, which we've talked about a whole bunch, which a lot of people view as the battle that ended chivalry. And then a lot of people forget that the very end, so it's just English victory, English victory, English victory. They've even got an English king that gets crowned in Paris as King of France. They make huge inroads. But then at the very end, the whole flow of this 100 Years' War is turned by the unlikeliest of people. Do you remember who that is?
No.
Joan of Arc.
Oh, really?
This little girl, the Maid of Orleans, has this vision that God wants her to liberate France from these English oppressors. And remember, at this point, this war has been going on for basically a century, maybe 80 years by the time she comes on the scene. So we think about what was going on in our world 80 years ago. That'd be like 1940. That would be like a kid right now, a teenager right now, having a vision that they need to go and clean up the results of World War II. This is way too big for her britches. But she receives a blessing from the French king to go and lift the English siege at Orleans, which a lot of people think if it had been successful, maybe that's the death knell. But instead, Joan of Arc shows up. I don't know what she did in the field or how she motivated people. I guess they believed God was on their side. And they win. They lift the siege. That's effectively the only thing she accomplishes militarily. She gets burned as a witch after being captured and taken to England in an obvious mockery of justice. And somehow the tide turns. I think it's very difficult to conquer things across a sea in those days. And ultimately things kind of settle back into France is France, England is England, with a few exceptions. There are a few English holdings left on the French side for a while. And then once again, English kings continue to claim the title King of France until Napoleon, early 1800s. But the war ends in the mid 1400s with both sides being on their side of the water. So here's my thing. This little combat of the 30 is a relatively small, it's a tiny chapter. I've never even heard of the chapter. It's a tiny chapter in a much, much bigger story. But the subtext of this whole 100 Years' War is the end of an era. It's the end of the era of honor. It's the end of the era of knights in shining armor and chivalry. And it's the beginning of, it's the very beginning of the early modern age that we're into at the end. And so I just wonder how many people were already starting to notice this cultural shift. How many people were shaking their heads when they got together for morning coffee with their buddies, and they were like, folks used to be a lot more chivalrous. Did you hear about this Battle of the 30 thing? Like, that is more of what we want to see. Like, that is the greatness of France on display right there. But these youngsters, they don't understand the value of honor and of integrity. And I'm telling you, it's going to be one generation. One generation is all it takes to run this thing into the ground, and we're not even going to do honor anymore. And so I wonder if this story of the combat of the 30 was exaggerated by a cultural sentiment amongst those who loved the days of yore, loved how they did things, and sensed that the winds of change were blowing in terms of how people would relate to each other and what honor and integrity and decency in society would look like. What do you think? Stretch?
No. So the story just gets repeated over and over and over by people who like, oh man, the way it used to be was the way it ought to be. That makes sense. Like I read one thing where there was a dinner or some kind of banquet. I don't know what it was. My source was Encyclopedia Britannica. It was many, many years after the event, but they said everybody looked back at that with such like reverence that someone was at that battle and was, as they say, one of the 30, that at this dinner many, many years later, they were just heaping honor upon this individual. They were like, man, that was him? He was one of the 30? Oh my gosh, he's here in the room? Oh goodness, it was a big deal.
Yeah, kids these days are lazy. They haven't had to fight for anything. You got this snowflake generation, and maybe some of those criticisms are fair. I think a lot of them are unfair. But the person who would say things like what I just said would also be one who'd be like, right there's an American hero. That guy is one of the last people, who's still hobbling around, who landed on Normandy Beach. Ironic that it's Normandy, but you get what I'm saying, right?
There was this guy that went to church with us growing up. His name was Paul Belby, and all the young men, myself included, we did this thing on the 4th of July where we would sing all the songs of the different armed forces to honor these veterans.
Oh, you did the Marine Corps hymn, and
yeah.
Did you do Battle Hymn of the Republic as well?
I don't remember.
We do not do that in Wyoming, but I'm familiar with the practice.
Anyway, so it was a thing where, you got all these gray-haired people in the church, and they're just older gentlemen, and they had all done something amazing in their lives, and nobody ever talked about it. And so this one time a year, we would play these songs, and we're like, hey, so when the song of your branch of the military is played, please stand up so we can just look at you. It's pretty much what it was.
Okay.
And whenever they would play the song for the Marines, keep our honor clean, whenever they would sing that, Paul Belby would stand up, and he would have this look on his face that I've never seen in any other man in my life. Afterwards, all the boys would whisper, like, do you know what Paul Belby did, right? Like, he was in the Pacific. And we're like, Paul Belby? Like, yeah, dude. You ever notice how quiet he is? We'd all say these things, like Paul Belby was this legend, this man among men, and I don't know what he did. He may have been in the rear echelon and provided water and logistics, or he may have been one of the flag bearers at Iwo Jima. He wasn't, but
I wondered if you'd go there. Yeah.
We don't know what Paul Belby did, and it didn't matter because he was part of that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was a thing to be respected. Like, that is a person that is greater than us, and we don't really know why or how, and we're not allowed to know because we're not one of the people that were there. But we do know that we should pay our respects in a very humble way. So I think if someone that was one of the 30 shows up at your dinner, and you give him the turkey leg or whatever, they didn't have turkeys there because that was a New World animal, but you give him the ham hock or however that worked.
Yeah, I think there might be two things going on. My first theory is the one you and I just discussed, that these guys became emblematic of a better generation. a better breed, a better moment in our history where there was some integrity still, not knights and foot soldiers stomping around in the mud and smashing other living men into the mud so that they would die. I mean, that's quite the opposite of taking a break for refreshments. But I also think that there really was an appreciation of what they did to reduce the cost. One of the things that happened somewhere in the 100 Years' War, and I think it was Poitiers, I don't remember which battle, I think that was it, like hundreds, maybe thousands, if I recall correctly, of French nobility all got captured on the battlefield in one afternoon. And they all got taken back to England, and they all got ransomed. And I'm sorry I don't remember the actual number, but the ransom payment that was required to buy back all of the nobility of France was like half their GDP or half their total property value. I mean, it was some obscene number that like is measurable in the total value of France. And it set them back like 10 years just trying to reload, to bring in multiple harvests and earn money and trade so that they could even engage in warfare again. It was a terrible blow to have those particular people get taken hostage. So when we talk about the cost of war, and I know there's an economic theory that says war is great for the economy because we build new things. I disagree with that economic theory. I think war destroys things. It takes valuable resources and then just busts them. It takes like valuable resources like human lives and just busts them. I don't think it's...
But it injects a different level of... it kicks the whole human innovation and motivation thing into overdrive. Like,
I will give you that.
Do we have steam engines as quickly as, or steamboats as quickly as we do if there's not the Civil War?
Sure.
Do we
and
have,
was it worth those 675,000 lives to get steam engines?
I understand.
Quicker?
I'm just making a side point. I'm not disagreeing with you. Like, do we have
Sure.
submarines as quickly as we do if, the Hunley wasn't created?
Yeah, and obviously the Civil War is a great example of a war that was worth it because you had millions of people living in
slavery,
absolute bondage, and being brutally mistreated by people who had enough hubris to believe that a human could own another human.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a pretty good example of a war that needed to happen. And hey, if we learned some stuff along the way about science and technology, that's just a bonus.
Gotcha.
But did we need 100 Years' War? Did this war need to happen?
Oh, does any war need to happen?
Maybe the Civil War.
Yeah. If there's ever injustice and someone willing to rise up to the cause to fight against that injustice, there will be war. I mean, the human heart is wicked. My heart is wicked. Your heart is wicked. We deep down, even though you may seem like a cool guy, I know if you were given absolute power, it would take every fiber of your being not to use that for your own ideas.
That's why it's better just not to have it. I don't want to find out.
Yeah, that's something that's scary to think about. But anyway, I don't know how we got here. Where are we at?
I'll tell you. So I think that another reason this was so celebrated is because the people at the time had recent living traumatic memory of how expensive war could be, not just in terms of, it breaks our equipment and it messes up the land and there's pillaging and mistreatment of women and children, but also war at this time could have an implication that could obliterate your economy just in ransom payments. So the fact that these guys didn't make Blois or Montfort go into the field and fight meant that nobody was going to get ransomed here. So on top of that, there's just a huge, basically these 30 guys on each side, the agreement they were making is, okay, somebody's going to get this territory and somebody's not, but we're not going to ruin this for everybody else by having a huge levy inflicted on the losers, serfs and peasants and normal common folk in order to pay for some stupid ransom like what happened last time. I think that's a little bit lost here, is just these people, effectively, all the normal people who weren't in the fight, owed those survivors a debt not just of gratitude, but of money, because they would have been impoverished had that been fought as a war and another ransom situation had occurred.
Yeah, but the thing that happened here is the prisoners were when when one side won and the English were taken prisoner, they were treated as cool dudes. So like, you were one of the 30. I get it. I mean,
Were they ransomed?
yeah, they were. Everything I read said it was just a very small ransom.
There you go. That's what I'd expect. Yep.
Yeah. Everything else I read said this changed literally nothing.
And that's probably why I hadn't heard of it, because this feels completely inconsequential to me.
It's effectively just one very complicated game of laser tag.
Yeah, where, a few people got killed in between refreshments.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So question for you.
Yeah.
If we had to take on all challengers as Americans, who would you nominate as our champion to go out and engage in one-on-one combat to defend the United States of America?
What are the weapons? We have to
Nothing.
nothing?
No. We're talking about like gym shorts and a t-shirt.
I actually thought about this recently because I went over to a friend's house. He's like, "Hey, do you want to come over and watch the UFC fight?" I have no interest in watching people just bludgeon each other with their fists or whatever it is, choke them out.
That's not my thing either. Right.
It's just not interesting. It just feels barbaric, is what I thought. And then I went over there and I watched all these guys that were starting to drink and they were getting ready to watch this fight. And I was like, wow, there's like an energy here. These people really want to see other humans smash each other in the face. Like, this feels barbaric. This feels like Roman Colosseum-ish. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so then these jokers came out, and there was this big, tall Russian dude fighting this shorter American guy. And I was like, what the heck, man? This is like Rocky 12 or something. What's going on here? And I heard that the president of the United States and the leader of Russia had called their individual fighters earlier in the day and told them to, hey, you're basically fighting for our nation right now. Good luck.
Holy cow, it's like the song Burning Heart by Survivor from Rocky IV.
What do you mean?
Literally, Survivor, the Eye of the Tiger people. They wrote a less well-known song called, I think it's called Burning Heart. And it's just like the most heavy-handed, spelled out, is it man against man or East versus West? Does the crowd understand what's happening? It's so through the front door, but apparently that's still going on.
Yeah, and I sat there and thought about it. I was like, this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. The American guy won in this case, and he knocked out the Russian guy. And at the end of the fight, they interviewed him, like in the ring. And the guy says, I got a call from the president this morning, and he told me to knock out that expletive. He said, the president told me to win this battle and knock out that, bad word. And I was like, holy cow, this is awful.
I don't want the president making those phone calls.
I don't either, at all. And so I got to thinking about it, and I felt like, wow, I don't have to think about what we would do. This actually happened.
Huh. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And so that feels weird. But for me, I'd probably pick The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, you'd have him charm the enemy.
He's a charming dude, man.
He's 100 out of 100 charisma.
He is. That joke,
absolutely maximum.
That Joker could win any political office he wanted, I'm convinced.
Don't you just feel like you're his friend?
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah, like if he was in Lander, I would just assume that we'd hang out.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about almost anyone else I see in TV or movies. I feel like, were I on fire, that guy wouldn't urinate on me to put me out. But The Rock would. He would urinate on me to put me out. And then maybe we'd get coffee after, to reload in case of another fire.
House Whitman is going to go to battle against House Claggett or House Sandlin. So who do you elect?
I already lose. Man.
It would be a little girl, a Joan of Arc character, wouldn't it?
I'll tell you this much. If it were me and I had to represent House Whitman, I am not embracing the tactics of aggression and physicality. I'm probably embracing tactics that look a little bit more like Littlefinger.
Yeah.
I'm going with words. I'm definitely going to try to work that out with words. Although I have been in one fight and I was victorious. 1 for 1, leaving it right there.
Against the bear?
No, 2 for 2 if we count the bear. I don't know. I think if it's just going to be like hand-to-hand combat, I guess you probably do just go and watch UFC and you figure out like who wins a lot, but also who seems most eager to break the rules that constrain them. Because if we're doing this kind of combat I want someone who will do whatever it takes to win if my house depends on it.
Yeah, in the same fight I watched, though, this guy, there was a different fight that night. He won. This individual won, and then he ran out of the ring and started punching someone out of the ring. I don't even know what the politics were of all this stuff, but he was clearly amped up on adrenaline, and he beat the guy in the ring, and then he just lunged after someone outside of the ring and started just waylaying them as well. I was like, what is this? This makes no sense to me.
That is not my world, man. When's the last time you punched someone? I think I've asked you this, but I don't remember your answer.
Like, earnestly punch someone in the face, I don't remember. I took karate when I was younger, and I was known to give a yup chuggy every now and then.
Whoa,
what? A yup chuggy, that's what they called a certain type of punch. And then the roundhouse, I enjoyed doing that. And I can tell you this, dude, if my house was ever attacked by 1 inch by 8 inch by 8 inch pine boards, we're safe, dude.
Mm-hmm. I really like hearing that. That's good.
I have a plan. No, I don't know if I've ever punched someone in actual combat. Me and some friends, we put on some sparring gloves one time, and I got paired up with John Michael, who was a giant dude, and nobody wanted to fight him. I was like, whatever, I'll take a hit. And we put the gloves on, and I swung and missed, and then John Michael came in with a right hook, and I felt snot squirt out of my nose and wrap around and slap me in my right ear, and I just threw the gloves down. I was like, you win.
I never want to do that again.
I like my brain, and you're about to make it bleed, so you win. So it was a tactical retreat. So we're still good friends.
I'm glad that didn't wreck it, and your brain came out intact.
I haven't ever punched somebody in like anger, but I've been willing to do that many times. I was in Henniger, Alabama one time, which is a place you've never heard of. It's up in the northeast corner of the state. And I used to visit Tara up there. She was working at an all-girls camp, and she was a counselor up there. And so I'd go up and visit her, and she'd have like 2 hours off, and we'd go grab something to eat or something. And I got there early one time, and I was at a little gas station in Henniger in my red truck. And I was waiting by the payphone because I had just called her, and I was trying to figure out when I was allowed to go pick her up and take her to dinner. And this guy pulls up at the gas station, and he's like, "What you looking at?"
What?
And I was like, "I'm not looking at anything." And he goes, "You want to fight?" And I was like, "What the heck is this, man? Is this Deliverance? And I was like, "Look, dude."
Right part of the world.
Yeah, I was like, "I don't know what the deal is, but if we need to throw down, let's just do it." You know? And so I was surprised at my ability to just rise to the occasion. I was like, I don't know what this is all about, but if something needs to happen, let's just get on with it. And he said something derogatory and drove away.
Oh.
I didn't know what to think. I was like, does this make me tough? Or does this make me sane? What just happened? Why does that guy not like me?
Well, who just rolls up and offers to fight?
I don't know. It was pretty awesome, though. I don't know. It almost felt like a test. It felt like, will you rise up and fight if you have to? And I was like, I don't even understand this, but
Yeah,
if
sure.
I've got to do it, okay. I remember seeing my dad fight one time.
Really?
It's like the coolest thing that ever happened as a kid. So we were at the house, and my dad had created this beeper. If someone drove up in the driveway, he had created a proximity sensor in the driveway so that their car would be detected and it would beep. And remember, this is early 90s. Dad was a nerd. And so beep, beep, beep. And so we were Pavlovian programmed to run to the window every time we heard the beeper in the house. And I ran up there to the window, and I still remember what it looked like. It was a pickup truck with 3 guys in it in the front seat, an old pickup truck. And I said, "Mom, there's guys out here, and one of them just got out, and he's walking funny to the back door," which he was drunk. I did not understand what was happening. And so she runs to the window and looks at it and calls my dad. And he said, "All right, kids, get with your mom, and y'all head on back to the bedroom." And he reaches up to where he kept his gun, and he grabs it, and he put it in the back behind his belt, like in his back. Like he put a pistol back there. And I was like, "Whoa, what's happening? This is awesome."
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm a child. I think things like that are awesome. And so there were 2 doors that went to my parents' room, And so Mom took us back there, and of course I snuck out, and I went and looked through the window at what was going on. And this guy walks up to the back porch, and there were steps running up to our back porch, and he goes, "Hey, you Redbone?" And my dad said, "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. You might be talking about the guy that lived here before us, but no, I'm not him, not who you're talking about. So just go ahead and head on out. No big deal." And the guy goes, "No, man, I think you're," and he kept repeating, "I think it was Redbone," or something crazy like that.
Okay.
And Dad was like, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave." And the guy started walking up the steps. And Dad, I'm sitting there looking. I was like, "Oh, wow, he's coming at Dad. What's about to happen?" And in one move, when he got to the top of the steps, my dad grabbed his arm, flipped it around his back. And have you ever seen somebody like pin their arm behind their back and push it up so that it hurts your shoulder?
Yeah, I tried it once as a joke with a friend, and it didn't go well.
You hurt your friend?
I did.
Oh, that's not cool.
I didn't even try to do it hard. It was a joke that we'd seen on TV, and the joke was you spin somebody around, and then you're like, "Who's asking the questions now?" And it was funny, and we'd both done it successfully a couple times.
Yeah.
And I did it, and unfortunately, her locker was open, and I broke her tooth on her locker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did that to like my best friend in high school.
I'm sorry that happened to you and her.
I'm sorry that happened to her. Yeah. Okay. So yes, I know the move. I'm not an expert at it, clearly.
So Dad did that to this guy, except when he put his arm behind him, he picked him up and he shot-putted him down the steps. Like he put all of his strength into the guy's back, into the small of his back, and pushed him forward like a person throwing a shot put in a track and field thing. The guy flies down the steps and lands and like spills on the ground in this drunk person floppy kind of way.
Yep.
And gets up and looks back at Dad and is like, "All right then, I guess we'll be seeing you." And walks back to the truck and drives away. And I was like, "Whoa, Dad just," you have these moments where you're like, "Oh wow, I always thought Dad would stick up for us, but he literally just went toe to toe with some random guy that wanted a confrontation, and he won."
Wow.
And we still live in peace. That was a big moment for me, seeing that happen. Anyway, this is interesting, dude. This was fun to talk about with you.
Well, I'll tell you what I liked about it is you teaching me things about history is always fun.
All I did was refer to an article that I read. I mean, I didn't do anything.
Whatever. I didn't even know this thing happened. I learned something today. This was fun.
The most important thing I want you to take from this is the knowledge that all you have to do is open up the Nerf gun and remove one little flap, and you can shoot a Nerf dart like twice as hard.
I feel like that's the point of the episode. Maybe we should call this episode "How to Modify a Nerf Gun for Added Velocity."
Or Chivalry and Nerf Guns.
Or since Nerf guns only came up for 30 seconds, maybe we'll just go with Chivalry.
Or Combat of the 30. I think that's what we call it.
Ooh, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Dude, this was fun, man. Thanks for educating me on this stuff. I'm hungry, and I would like to go get lunch if that's cool with you.
I would like to let you do that. Thanks for hanging out, buddy.
Yeah. Sweet.
Asta.